I accidentally sent a text to the wrong person, and what happened next completely turned my life upside down. It was almost midnight, and my apartment smelled like reheated pizza and cheap whiskey. Not exactly the environment of a man who had his life together, but then again, I never claimed I did. My laptop sat open on the coffee table, Illustrator files still untouched, while Netflix autoplayed some show I'd long stopped paying attention to. Instead, I was hunched over my phone, thumbs flying across the screen, unloading a rant into the only person who could tolerate my late night mental spirals. Mark. Bro, I swear, if I have to listen to Greg talk about synergy one more time, I'm gonna staple my ears shut. And don't even get me started on Sophie. Jesus, the way she smiles when she hands me a file. Like she knows. Like she knows I'm a total idiot for having a crush on her when she's way out of my league. I paused, reread it, and laughed to myself. Yeah, it was a lot. But Mark and I had been friends since college, and he'd heard worse. Usually he'd reply with a dumb meme or some sarcastic wisdom about how I should just marry her already. I kept typing. And the worst part? Greg's little pep talk in front of everyone today. Like, thanks for publicly pointing out my need to improve communication. Totally not embarrassing at all. God, I wish Sophie hadn't been there to see that. I swear she looked at me like she was trying not to laugh. I topped it off with a blurry selfie of me holding my whiskey glass, a sarcastic thumbs up, and a final line. Anyway, that's my TED Talk. Thanks for coming. I hit send without double checking the recipient. Rookie mistake. A moment later, I set my phone down and took another sip. My apartment was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Outside, faint city noise leaked in the occasional car horn, the murmur of people walking past. I was about to grab another slice of pizza when my phone buzzed. I grinned, expecting some savage comeback from Mark, but the name on the screen wasn't Mark. It was just a number. No name, no contact photo, unknown. The message read, "Bold of you to assume she's out of your league." I blinked. For a second, I thought maybe Mark had changed his number without telling me. Or maybe it was one of those spam messages that just happened to accidentally make sense. But no, they had clearly read my rant. I scrolled up and my stomach dropped. I hadn't sent the text to Mark at all. I had sent it to this whoever the hell it was. Some completely random number. The whiskey buzz in my head fizzled instantly. My brain replayed the moment. Me, half distracted, typing away, clicking the first M that popped up in my contacts. I must have picked the wrong one. I stared at the reply, debating what to do. My first instinct was to apologize, explain it was a mistake, and block them before they could screenshot my humiliation. But curiosity and maybe a bit of panic got the better of me. I typed back, sorry, who is this? 3 dots appeared almost immediately, the typing bubble bouncing in that infuriatingly smug way. Then you texted me. Remember? Thought we were being honest here. Ethan. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't told them my name. I sat up straighter, glancing around my apartment like they might somehow be here. This was either an elaborate prank by Mark, which would be very on brand for him, or something else entirely. Do I know you better than you think? Something about the phrasing, the confidence in it, made my skin prickle. This wasn't just some wrong number stranger playing along for laughs. There was intent here. I tried to play it cool. Okay, clearly you've got the wrong idea. This was supposed to go to my friend. My bad. Was it though? Or was it meant for me? I frowned at the screen. Part of me wanted to just toss the phone on the couch and forget this ever happened, but my fingers kept moving. Look, I don't know what your deal is, but I'm gonna block this number. You won't. I hesitated. It wasn't a threat exactly, but it didn't feel casual either. And why is that? Because you want to know who I am. Okay, they weren't wrong. Every sensible part of me said this was a waste of time, that I should just block them, laugh it off, and go to bed. But something about the way they were steering the conversation, not aggressive, not kind, but deliberate, made me want to dig deeper. Fine. Who are you? Call me C. I exhaled sharply through my nose. Of course. Mysterious letter name. This was either some edgy teenager or someone with way too much time on their hands. C, right. And how exactly do you know me? We cross paths more often than you realize. That one made me glance toward my window again, even though my blinds were drawn. At work? Sometimes. So, you're a coworker? Not exactly. Then where? There was a pause this time. Long enough for me to think maybe they'd gotten bored and left. Then, figuring it out is half the fun. My mouth was dry now. What had started as a stupid drunken mistake was starting to feel like the setup to a horror movie I didn't want to be in. I typed out, "Look, seriously, stop," and hovered over send. My phone buzzed before I could. A new message. "See you tomorrow, Ethan." I froze. I hadn't told them where I worked. I hadn't told them my schedule. Hell, I hadn't told them anything except what was in that one drunken rant. But somehow, they knew. Morning came too quickly. I woke with that heavy, unfocused fog that comes from too little sleep and too much thinking. The words from last night were still fresh in my head, looping in the same uneasy rhythm. "See you tomorrow, Ethan." I told myself it was just some elaborate joke. Maybe Mark had given my number to someone as a prank. But when I checked my messages, the chat with C was still there. No deleted history. No vanishing act. Just Their words, as real as the coffee I was about to chug. At work, my focus was non-existent. Every time someone walked past my desk, my eyes flicked up, scanning their face. Every time a coworker's phone buzzed, my stomach tightened. Greg, my boss, was in one of his inspirational moods, lecturing the design team about the importance of engaging visual narratives. I caught maybe 3 words of it. My eyes kept drifting toward the glass doors of the office, half expecting some hooded figure to be standing there, watching me. By noon, I'd convinced myself I needed to tell someone. So, on my lunch break, I called Mark. "Morning, sunshine," he answered, voice groggy. "Or I guess, afternoon. You alive?" "Barely," I said. "Listen, something weird happened last night." "Define weird. You accidentally ordered 6 pizzas again?" "No, worse. I sent that rant about Greg and Sophie to the wrong number." "Oh," he chuckled. And they texted back." He snorted. "What'd they say? Lose my number, creep?" "No. They knew my name, Mark. They said they'd see me today." That earned me a short pause. Then, "Okay, yeah, creepy, but it's probably just some troll. You post your work stuff online, right? Maybe they recognize you." I rubbed the back of my neck. "Maybe." "Look, man, you overthink everything. Block the number, move on, or don't block them and mess with them back. People like that just want attention." "Yeah, you're probably right," I lied. But the thing was, I didn't believe him. The rest of the day dragged. Sophie stopped by my desk once to drop off a file, her smile as easy as ever. No flicker of secret knowledge, no hidden smirk. If she knew anything about my wrong text fiasco, she wasn't showing it. When 5 o'clock hit, I practically bolted for the door. I needed air. The city was cooling down, that faint autumn crispness replacing the heavy afternoon heat. I was halfway across the street toward the subway when my phone buzzed in my pocket. One new message. "Look behind you." My pulse kicked up instantly. I turned, scanning the sidewalk, and there, across the street, near the corner, stood a tall figure in a dark hoodie. They weren't moving, just watching. Even from the distance, I felt the weight of their gaze. Then a bus rolled between us. When it passed, the figure was gone. I stood there, longer than I should have, pretending to check my phone, waiting for them to reappear, but they didn't. Eventually, I forced myself into the subway, all too aware of how many faces I didn't recognize. I wasn't always like this jumpy, suspicious. A few years ago, I'd been the opposite. Open, trusting, stupidly so. Then came the breakup. Her name was Mia. We'd been together nearly 2 years, and I thought I knew her inside out. Until I found out she'd been seeing someone else for months, and not just anyone. One of my friends. The kind of betrayal that makes you question your ability to read people at all. Since then, I'd kept my personal life in a tight circle. Mark, my sister, occasionally, and even with Sophie, the closest thing to a crush I'd had in years, I kept it light. No confessions, no vulnerability. Which is why last night's slip felt like a violation of my own rules. I'd opened a door I didn't mean to, and someone had stepped right in. That night, I tried to shake it off. I ordered Chinese, put on music, and convinced myself it was over. Whoever C was, they'd had their fun. Then my phone buzzed again. "Enjoy the dumplings?" I froze mid-bite. Slowly, I set the carton down. "How the hell do you know what I'm eating?" I typed. "I pay attention." I scanned the window. The blinds were closed, but suddenly they didn't feel like much of a barrier. Over the next hour, the messages kept coming. "That jacket didn't match your shirt today." "You talked to Sophie like you're scared she'll bite." "Greg's tie was hideous, right?" Each one was a direct reference to something that had happened that day. Things you'd only know if you'd been there. And then came the one that made my breath catch. "Remember when you told Sophie about the great stapler escape?" I stared at the words. That was a joke from months ago, when Sophie had dropped her stapler and it had somehow slid halfway across the office. I'd made a big, mock-serious deal about rescuing it, and she'd laughed so hard she nearly cried. We'd never told anyone else. Not even Mark. My fingers trembled as I typed, "Who are you?" The reply came quick, "Yes." By the time the sun set, I was pacing my apartment. Every shadow felt like it held someone. Every car passing outside made me check the lock. Then, just before midnight, my phone lit up one last time. One image. It was my apartment window. Taken from outside, the curtains were partly open just enough to see me in the reflection, phone in hand. The photo sat on my phone screen like it was burning a hole through it. My own reflection, half lit by the glow of my TV, caught mid-step in my living room. And someone was close enough outside my apartment to get that shot. I didn't think. I dialed 911. My voice came out faster than I realized. Someone's watching me. They sent me a picture from outside my window. The operator's tone was polite, but flat, as if reading from a script. "Is the person still there?" "I don't know. No, I don't see anyone now, but they knew I was in here. They took a picture of me." "Has there been any physical confrontation? Any attempt to enter your home?" "No, but..." "So no direct threat at this time?" I gripped the phone tighter. "They said they'd see me tomorrow. They know my name." A pause, the faint clicking of a keyboard. "Sir, I'll make a note of it, but without a direct threat or physical evidence of trespassing, there's not much we can do. You may want to consider blocking the number and..." "Are you kidding me?" I cut in. "They were outside my apartment." "I understand, sir, but..." "No, you don't. Forget it." I hung up. The call left me with that hollow, useless feeling you get when you realize no one's coming to help. I stayed awake until 3 a.m., every creak of the building making me flinch. The blinds stayed shut. I double-checked the locks twice. Then again an hour later. The next morning, I walked to the hardware store and bought 2 more deadbolts, a chain lock, and heavier curtains. By noon, my door looked like something out of a panic room, and still, I didn't feel safe. That night, as I sat at my desk pretending to work, my phone buzzed. "You're looking in the wrong direction." I stared at the words, my stomach tightening. Wrong direction. Meaning what? That they weren't watching me from the street? That they were somewhere else? Somewhere closer? I typed back before I could stop myself. "What does that mean?" No reply. The next few days blurred together. I kept my head down at work, but my mind was on constant loop, retracing every step, every interaction, trying to figure out who could be behind this. I started saving every message from C, screenshotting them, backing them up in a hidden folder. I kept a notepad on me, writing down exact times they texted, what I was doing, where I was. The patterns were strange. Some messages came when I was at work, others when I was home, a few in places I hadn't even told Mark or Sophie I'd be. Whoever this was, they weren't just watching, they were following. By Thursday night, I knew I needed help, but not from the police. That's when I thought of Jules. Back in college, Jules had been the kind of friend who could crack the Wi-Fi password in the library just by guessing. They weren't a full-blown hacker, but they knew enough about tech to find things most people couldn't. We'd fallen out of touch after school, but I still had their number. I called. "Ethan Brooks," Jules said after the second ring. Well, either you butt-dialed me or you're desperate." "I'm desperate," I admitted. "Figures. What's the problem?" I told them everything, the wrong text, the creepy messages, the photo. Jules didn't laugh, didn't even interrupt. When I finished, there was a long pause. "Send me the number," they said. "I'll see what I can dig up." 2 days later, we met at a cafe near my office. Jules looked the same, worn leather jacket, hair in a messy bun, expression halfway between amusement and suspicion. "This isn't random," they said without preamble. I leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "The messages aren't coming from a single number. They're being spoofed, meaning whoever this is can make it look like they're texting from different phones. But all those numbers, they ping from one main device. And that device is almost always near your workplace." My stomach sank. "So, it's someone at my job? Not necessarily in your job. Could be a neighbor, someone who hangs around. But it's not some stranger across the country. This is local." That made my skin crawl in a whole new way. The next week, I tried to act normal, but Sophie noticed. "You okay?" she asked one afternoon, leaning against my desk. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." "You've been jumpy lately. More than usual." "More than usual." I raised an eyebrow. She grinned faintly. "You're cautious, Ethan. It's kind of your thing." If she only knew. I wanted to tell her. Every time she walked away, I told myself I should. But the thought of her getting dragged into this mess of her becoming another target stopped me. That Friday night, I was home alone when the final text of the week came through. "Stop digging, or I'll make sure Sophie finds out everything." I sat there, heart pounding, staring at the words until the screen dimmed. What everything meant, I didn't know, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. The phone screen glared back at me like it was holding its breath. "Stop digging, or I'll make sure Sophie finds out everything." I read it again and again. The words didn't change, but the meaning kept twisting in my gut. Whoever this was, they knew Sophie. They knew something. Maybe about me, maybe about her, and they weren't afraid to dangle it like a knife over both our heads. My first instinct was to throw the phone against the wall, but I forced myself to set it down on the counter instead. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight, like someone was slowly cinching a belt around my ribs. That was when the decision solidified. Sophie was officially part of this, whether she liked it or not, and I wasn't going to wait for C to make the next move. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I didn't even tell them I'd be late. My focus was singular, making sure Sophie was safe. She lived on the other side of town, and I told myself I was just going to do a quick pass by her apartment before heading to the office. But the quick pass turned into me parking down the street from her building, watching from behind my tinted windows as she came out. She looked normal, coffee in hand, hair tucked under a loose beanie, scrolling through her phone like it was just another Thursday. She had no idea someone might be watching her. I tailed her at a distance, far enough she wouldn't notice, close enough I could intervene if anything happened. At first it felt ridiculous, like I was playing some kind of spy game, but then she stopped at a crosswalk and I saw her glance over her shoulder. Not in the casual, "oh, I'm people watching" way. This was sharper, paranoid. I almost got out of the car right there, but the light changed and she kept walking. I followed her until she reached her office building. She went inside without incident. I should have left, but my feet moved before my brain caught up, and suddenly I was in the lobby, pretending to be looking at the directory while I kept my eye on the elevator panel lighting up. She was on the 12th floor. 5 minutes later, I was back in my car, telling myself I'd done my part. That evening, I repeated the routine. Same car, same distance, same excuse in my head, just making sure she got home okay. I watched her go into her building and started to drive off. But then, headlights flashed behind me. A tap on my window made me jump so hard my teeth clacked together. It was Sophie. She stood there in her work clothes, arms crossed, a look that was somewhere between confused and annoyed. I rolled the window down a few inches. "Ethan," she said slowly, "why are you following me?" My mouth went dry. "I wasn't." "Don't even try. I saw you this morning too. You've been shadowing me?" I swallowed. I wanted to make sure you were okay." Her eyebrows pulled together. "Okay from what?" That was the moment. the fork in the road. I could either keep her in the dark or tell her that her life might already be tangled up in whatever mess I was in. So I told her. I told her about the messages, the vague threats, the way the sender seemed to know where I was. And when I got to last night's text, she went still. When I finished, she leaned back against my car. Ethan, I think I know why they're doing this. We went upstairs to her apartment, and that's when she showed me. In her kitchen drawer, tucked under a stack of takeout menus, was a pile of small, cream-colored envelopes. Each one had her name on it in blocky, capital letters. No return address. She pulled out a few and slid them across the table. I opened one at random. Do you think he's being honest with you? Another. Some things are better left buried. The phrasing made my stomach twist. It was the same cadence, the same creepy confidence as the texts I'd been getting. How long have you been getting these? I asked. A few weeks, she admitted. I thought it was just some weird prank, but now I'm not so sure. We sat there in silence for a while, both processing the fact that this wasn't just my problem anymore. When she finally spoke again, her voice was quieter. There's something I never told you about my past. I looked up. Okay, back in college, I dated this guy, Caleb. At first, he was charming, attentive. Then he got obsessive, controlling. He'd show up at my classes, follow me home. I finally got a restraining order after he broke into my dorm. He disappeared after that. I haven't seen him since. My chest went cold. You think this is him? I don't know, but if it is, he's escalated. That was the moment the plan formed. Half out of fear, half out of raw defiance. We're not going to just wait for him to make the next move, I said. We're setting a trap. We called Jules. Jules listened, asked a few sharp questions, then told us exactly what we need. A small, inconspicuous tracking device, a way to lure C into contacting us again, and nerves of steel. By midnight, Jules had the tech ready, a program that could trace the origin of a signal in real time. Not just the general area, but the exact building it was pinging from. 2 days later, we got our chance. Another text came through on my phone. You're wasting your time. You can't stop me. Jules started tracing. The little map on his laptop flickered, updated, then zoomed in on my neighborhood. The dot stopped moving and my blood ran cold. It wasn't just near my building, it was in my building. We didn't even talk about whether to go. We just went. The unit was supposed to be vacant. Had been for months according to the landlord. But the door wasn't locked. It swung open with a slow creak. The air inside stale and faintly metallic. At first, it looked empty. Bare floors, no furniture. But then my eyes adjusted and I saw the walls. They were covered, floor to ceiling, in photos. Me, Sophie. Us at the coffee shop, me coming out of my office, Sophie jogging in the park. Some of them were taken from so close I could see the reflection of the street in my sunglasses. Every muscle in my body locked up. Sophie stepped closer to one wall, her hand trembling as she touched a photo of herself laughing in her kitchen. The room was silent except for her whisper. Ethan, he's been here, watching us, for a long time. The smell hit me first. Stale air, faint mildew, and something metallic like old coins left in the rain. The place was empty, but it felt occupied. I could feel the weight of someone's presence lingering in the walls. Sophie stood a few feet from me, her eyes wide, scanning the mess of pinned photographs, scraps of paper, and string-strewn connections that covered the peeling plaster. It wasn't just random shots. Whoever did this had been close enough to capture moments we didn't even know were moments. Sophie walking home from work, me unlocking my door, us talking at the cafe, even one of us sitting silently on a park bench. The creepiest ones were zoomed in to the point where you could see expressions, tiny movements. Sophie's voice was barely above a whisper. Ethan, this is... I know. I swallowed, trying to keep my tone steady. We've got enough now. We take pictures, send them to the police. Her fingers clenched the hem of her sweater. Do you think he's still? A noise. A faint tap. We both froze. It came from somewhere down the hall, just one sharp, hollow sound, like a shoe scuffing against bare floorboards. My pulse spiked. I motioned for Sophie to stay behind me, edging toward the sound. But when I peeked into the hallway, it was empty. By the time we backed out of the unit and locked the door, Sophie's breathing was shaky. I wanted to tell her it was okay, but I didn't believe it myself. The police came quicker this time. Maybe it was the wall of evidence. Maybe it was the look on Sophie's face. 2 uniformed officers photographed every inch of the apartment, while another took our statements. This is serious now. One of them, Officer Marquez said, jotting notes. It's clearly targeted harassment, possibly breaking and entering. We'll dust for prints and get surveillance footage from the building. Sophie's voice trembled. He has pictures of us in private places. How is that even possible? That was the question clawing at me too. But the thing was, C knew. The very next day, I got a text from an unfamiliar number. No threats this time, just a file. When I opened it, my stomach turned to ice. It was an audio recording, my voice, Sophie's voice, talking in her apartment. About him, about the trap we'd set, about finding the room. I didn't remember saying half of it, but I remembered the night, and I remembered exactly where I'd been sitting. The phone slipped from my hand. Sophie, I called, my voice tight. She came over, listened, and went pale. Ethan, this was inside my apartment. We both knew what it meant. He wasn't just watching. He was listening. From that moment on, paranoia wasn't a feeling anymore. It was a constant thrumming state of being. I checked my locks twice an hour. Sophie unplugged anything that looked like it might have a microphone. Even Jules, my one unshakable tech genius friend, sounded unnerved when I told him. Whoever this is, Jules said over the phone, they're good. They're spoofing numbers, bouncing signals. This isn't some random creep. It's someone with access inside your building, maybe inside your life. That last part stuck with me, because when I thought about access, one name kept popping up, Mark, my best friend. The guy I trusted with my spare keys. The guy who'd known Sophie since the day we met. It was wrong to suspect him, but the seed was planted and I couldn't unsee it. 2 nights later, the seed sprouted. I woke up to silence, the wrong kind of silence. My apartment always hummed with the low buzz of the fridge, the whisper of air through the vents, but that night, it felt muffled, and then I saw it. My front door was unlocked. I never left it unlocked. Every instinct screamed at me not to move, but I did slowly, padding to the kitchen. There, in the center of the counter, was a single Polaroid. It was me, sleeping. The edges of the photo were still curling, like it had been developed recently. My throat tightened as I flipped it over. In thick black marker, scrawled across the back, the words, "You're mine until I say otherwise." Ethan had stopped trusting the quiet. It used to mean peace, the background hum of city life, muted by the thick walls of his apartment. Now, it felt like the silence was listening back. Every creak of the floorboards, every faint click from the heating system, set his pulse on edge. He hadn't truly slept in days. The moment he closed his eyes, his brain began replaying the image of that Polaroid from last week. Him sleeping, head tilted against the pillow, completely unaware. The way the photo's flash had washed him in stark white light made his skin crawl. Whoever had taken it hadn't just been in the apartment. They'd been close, inches away. Sophie noticed the toll. "You look like you're one caffeine shot away from a heart attack," she said one night, sitting cross-legged on his couch with her laptop. "You need to crash at my place for a while." "I don't know if that'll change anything," Ethan muttered, staring at the locked door like it was just decoration. "They're, everywhere, Sophie. They're always one step ahead." "Then at least let's be one step together," she said firmly, snapping the laptop shut. "I'll feel better knowing you're not here alone." Reluctantly, Ethan agreed. He packed an overnight bag with just the essentials, toothbrush, phone charger, a change of clothes, though it felt absurdly inadequate against the shadow following him. Sophie's apartment was smaller than his, but warm. The moment he stepped inside, it smelled faintly of cinnamon and coffee. For the first time in weeks, Ethan thought maybe he could rest. They ordered takeout, sat on the floor eating noodles straight from the carton, and tried talking about anything other than them. But the reprieve didn't last. The first night, Sophie's phone pinged with a message from an unknown number. "He sleeps with his mouth open." Cute. She froze mid-bite, her hand tightening around the carton until the cheap cardboard bent. Ethan's stomach dropped. "Delete it," he said quickly. "Don't answer." She didn't, but the damage was done. The invisible barrier they'd tried to build around themselves shattered in seconds. The next morning, Ethan called Jules. "We have to do something," he said, pacing Sophie's kitchen. "It doesn't matter where I am, they find me." Jules was quiet for a moment, then said, "Then maybe we let them. On our terms." "What's that supposed to mean?" "A bait setup," she explained. "We pick a public place with heavy surveillance. We control the variables, force them to come to you." Ethan hesitated. "You want me to dangle myself like bait?" "It's the best chance we've got," Jules said. "Right now, they're calling the shots. We flipped that." Sophie wasn't thrilled about the idea, but she didn't argue, just stayed glued to Ethan's side as they hashed out a plan. 2 days later, the trap was set. They chose a busy park downtown, a wide open space with multiple security cameras, police presence nearby, and nowhere to blend in without being caught on film. Ethan sat on a bench in the center, pretending to scroll his phone, while Jules monitored from a coffee shop across the street with a direct feed from the cameras. Sophie walked the perimeter, pretending to be on a call, eyes sweeping the crowd. At first, it was almost boring. Parents pushed strollers, joggers cut through the paths, a group of teens tossed a frisbee. But then, Ethan felt it, that itch, the prickling awareness of being watched. He looked up and saw a hooded figure sitting on a bench about 30 feet away. They weren't looking at their phone, weren't pretending to read a book. They were looking directly at him. "Jules," he murmured into the tiny mic clipped to his shirt. "East side bench, gray hoodie, black jeans." "I see them," Jules said. "Don't move. Let's see what they do." The figure stayed still for another 30 seconds, then suddenly stood. Ethan's pulse spiked. They began walking not toward him, but past him. As they passed, Ethan felt the faint brush of fabric against his jacket. By the time he turned, the figure was already gone into the crowd. "Ethan?" Jules' voice came through. "What just happened?" Ethan reached into his pocket. His fingers closed around something small and hard. A USB drive. Back at Sophie's apartment, they plugged it into her laptop. It took seconds for the contents to load, but Ethan's heart was pounding so loud it drowned out the fan of the computer. There were folders, dozens of them, labeled with dates. He clicked one. Photos. Hundreds of them. Ethan eating breakfast, Ethan at work, Ethan walking home at night, candid shots of him at the grocery store, on the subway, even sitting in Sophie's living room. Some were taken from far away, some from uncomfortably close, but all of them screamed one thing. You've been watched for a very, very long time. Then came the audio files. The first was just muffled background noise. The second was him talking to a coworker. The third was him and Sophie in her apartment, laughing about something stupid. Sophie's hand clamped over her mouth. "Ethan, this is..." "I know," he said sharply, almost to cut her off before she said what they were both thinking. The final folder contained video clips, some grainy, some in HD, but all of them were him in his own home, at his desk, asleep in bed. The last file wasn't labeled, just a timestamp. Ethan clicked it. The screen went black for a second. Then a figure appeared, masked, standing in his kitchen. The camera was handheld, the angle shifting slightly as the person tilted their head, almost curious. Then they spoke. Their voice was distorted, mechanical. "This is just the beginning." The video cut off. Ethan stared at the screen, his throat dry. No one said anything. And that was when it hit him. They weren't just in his life. They were inside it. Updates. I don't know how long I just sat there in Sophie's living room, staring at that USB drive like it was some kind of cursed relic. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Sophie was pacing the length of the rug, muttering under her breath, and Jules had his laptop open, already pulling up programs I didn't even know existed. The final video on the drive kept replaying in my head that masked figure in my kitchen, saying, "This is just the beginning." Every syllable was meant to crawl under my skin. It worked. "All right," Jules said finally, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "Let's see what we're working with." We decided to plug it in at his place instead of Sophie's, just in case the drive had malware. Jules was a tech consultant for a private security firm, so his home office looked like a mix between NASA mission control and a conspiracy theorist's bunker. Multiple screens, encrypted hard drives, sound-dampening foam on the walls. The second we walked in, he locked the door and shut every curtain. He slid the USB into a port, and the first thing that popped up was the same folder structure we'd seen before, dozens of dated folders with photos, videos, and audio files. But there was also something new, buried deep in a subfolder labeled Miss C. "Hidden file," Jules muttered. "Encrypted. This wasn't meant to be seen unless you really know where to look." My pulse spiked. "Can you get in?" He smirked. "Please? This is child's play compared to some of the stuff I've cracked." For the next 45 minutes, I sat in silence while Jules typed so fast it sounded like rain on a tin roof. Sophie hovered near me, squeezing my hand every now and then, like she could physically keep me from falling apart. Finally, with a low beep, the file opened. It was a video clip, grainy, black and white, clearly from some kind of security camera. The angle was awkward, partially blocked by a stack of moving boxes, but in the background, just barely, was a mirror, and in that mirror's warped reflection was a face. Not clear enough to make out every detail, but clear enough to tell one thing. This person wasn't some random stranger. They lived in my building. I felt the air leave my lungs. "I know that hallway," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "That's the storage room in the basement. Only residents have access." Sophie froze. "So, C has been in the building this whole time?" Jules leaned back in his chair. "Looks like it, which means this just went from creepy to personal. Whoever this is, they've been watching you up close." The weight of it crushed me. This wasn't some faceless threat miles away. This was someone who brushed past me in the lobby, someone who nodded politely in the elevator. We needed to move fast. Jules suggested setting up a more advanced sting. His idea was simple. Use me as bait again, but this time inside the building where the suspect was most comfortable and more likely to slip up. We installed 2 hidden cameras in the laundry room, another in the stairwell, and one just outside my apartment door. All of them fed directly to Jules' encrypted system. He also gave me a discreet body mic disguised as a shirt button and an earpiece so he could communicate with me in real time. Sophie hated the idea. "You're literally walking into their territory. What if they snap? What if they're dangerous?" "They already broke into my apartment, Sophie," I said quietly. "They've already been in my kitchen. If we don't end this now, it's just going to get worse." She didn't like it. No, but she didn't argue again. The first night was uneventful. I hung out in the laundry room for an hour, pretending to scroll on my phone, making trips back and forth to my apartment to grab more detergent. Nobody suspicious. The second night, though, things shifted. Around 10:15 p.m., Jules' voice crackled in my ear. "Ethan, we've got movement in the stairwell camera. Hoodie, dark jeans. They've been hovering on the landing for 2 minutes." My heart started pounding. "Copy." I stayed seated on the laundry counter, pretending to read messages. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow pass the doorway. "Coming your way," Jules whispered. The figure entered slow, deliberate steps. The hood was pulled low over their face, but something about the posture set off alarms in my head. They moved like they knew exactly where every camera was, but didn't realize there were new ones. I played it cool, tossed a sock into the dryer. That's when it happened. They stopped a few feet away and said almost casually, "Working late again, Ethan?" It was the first time I'd ever heard them speak. The voice, I froze. My brain scrambled to place it, but the recognition hit me like a freight train. I knew that voice. I turned my head, slowly, heart in my throat. I don't think there's a right way to explain what it feels like when the monster you've been looking over your shoulder for turns out to have been sitting at your table the whole time. After the stairwell incident in Update 1, I couldn't get that voice out of my head. The way it cracked under the weight of surprise, the familiar rhythm of the words. It was the voice I'd heard on late-night gaming calls, on drunken walks home, during lazy afternoons when we'd sit around talking about nothing. It was Mark, my best friend, the guy who had been my wingman, my emergency contact, the person who helped me move into this building in the first place. For the next 2 days, Jules and I didn't say a word about it to anyone. We were careful, deliberate, Sophie knew something was wrong, but I couldn't tell her until I knew for sure. If I told her too soon, and Mark somehow got tipped off, he might vanish before we had proof. Jules called in a favor from someone she knew in the local PD, a surveillance tech guy, who owed her for some work she'd done on a private case a while back. We enhanced the blurry reflection from the USB video. It wasn't crystal clear, but when we compared the outline, build, and gate to other footage we had of Mark from building security, it lined up. Still, blurry footage wasn't enough for an arrest. We needed him on record, in the act. We decided to set up another bait scenario, only this time, we weren't leaving anything to chance. Jules helped me set up a vulnerability window. Basically, I would post on social media that I'd be home alone for the weekend because Sophie was out of town with friends. She wasn't. She was in Jules's apartment 2 floors up, watching the feeds with her. We even staged photos of me with takeout boxes and a beer, making it look like I was settling in for a solo night. What we didn't post? There were now hidden cameras in every corner of my apartment, motion sensors, audio recorders. If Mark came in, we'd know. I didn't have to wait long. At 1:14 a.m., my phone buzzed with a silent notification from Jules' system. Motion detected living room. I was lying in bed, pretending to be asleep, heart pounding so hard I thought it would give me away. I heard the faintest click of the lock turning, not breaking, just unlocking. He had a key. The door eased open, and through the tiny gap of my almost closed bedroom door, I saw him. Mark, hood up, gloves on, moving like he'd done this 100 times. He didn't even look nervous. He went straight to my desk, rifled through drawers, picked up my phone, which was a decoy, my real one was hidden under the mattress, and started scrolling through it. Then he did something that made my stomach turn. He pulled a folded piece of paper out of his pocket, walked over to my kitchen counter, and set it down. He smoothed it out with his hand, then took a photo of it with his phone. I didn't know it yet, but that note said, "She's lying to you. She's using you. You'll see." I pushed the door open slowly. Mark. He froze like a statue, then turned his head toward me, and for the first time in my life, I saw his face with absolutely no trace of the friend I knew. Just cold calculation. "You shouldn't be awake," he said, voice low. "Shouldn't be? Are you kidding me? You've been stalking me for over a year, breaking into my home, planting cameras." He actually had the audacity to laugh. "Stalking? No. Protecting. There's a difference." "Protecting me from what?" I demanded. "From her," he said like it was obvious. "Sophie, she's not who you think she is, Ethan. She's manipulative. She's pulling you away from people who actually care about you." I couldn't even process the hypocrisy of that statement. "You put my life through hell because you were jealous?" Mark's jaw tightened. "Because I care. Because you are making a mistake. You don't see it now, but you will." Jules's voice crackled in my ear through the hidden earpiece. "We've got everything. Don't let him leave." "I don't think you understand," I said, stepping forward, my hands shaking but my voice steady. "This ends tonight." I tipped off the police before the sting that we suspected a break-in was imminent, so they were staged just outside the building. Jules triggered the silent alarm as soon as Mark stepped inside. Less than a minute after our confrontation began, there was a loud knock at the door, followed by, "Police! Open up!" Mark's eyes darted toward the sound. "You called the cops on me?" "Of course I did," I said. "You've been terrorizing me for months, Mark. You think I was just going to let you keep going?" He tried to bolt past me, but I blocked the hallway. The door burst open and 2 officers rushed in, guns drawn. They ordered him to the ground. Mark didn't fight. He just looked at me as they cuffed him, his expression unreadable. "You'll thank me one day," he said, almost calmly, as they walked him out. The police took our footage, the USB drive, and the note as evidence. They told me Mark would likely be charged with multiple counts of stalking, trespassing, unlawful surveillance, and harassment. But none of that stopped the shaking in my hands that night, or the way I sat on my couch staring at the door for hours, half expecting him to somehow walk back in. Sophie was furious not just at what Mark had done, but at the fact that he'd been so close to us this whole time. She kept pacing the room, saying I knew something was off about him, like she was trying to convince herself she had seen the signs. I didn't say it, but I trusted him more than anyone, and that trust had been weaponized against me. The weirdest part? I kept thinking back to all the times over the past year when Mark had been randomly around, showing up at my favorite coffee shop, offering to help me with the stuff at home. Even little things like sending me articles about relationship red flags, all of it now felt like part of some long, calculated campaign. I don't know what's worse. The idea that he did all this because he genuinely thought he was protecting me, or the possibility that it was all about control. Either way, the damage is done. I don't sleep much these days. Every sound in the hallway makes me tense up. Every creak of the building makes my chest tighten. Jules says this isn't over yet, that people like Mark don't just stop, and she's right, because the night after his arrest, I got a letter slipped under my door. It wasn't signed, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. "You think you're safe now? This was just the first act." I thought that once Mark was behind bars, the nightmare would be over. Turns out, paranoia doesn't just evaporate when the threat is gone. It seeps into your bones, settles in the back of your mind, and waits for the quiet moments to remind you that danger might still be out there. The first few days after his arrest, Sophie practically moved into my apartment. She claimed it was to help me get back into a normal routine, but I knew she was worried I'd spiral into insomnia and constant self-surveillance again. She wasn't wrong. Every creak in the walls made me check the locks. Every shadow in the hallway made my pulse spike. Every time I caught a stranger looking in my direction, I wondered if they were connected to Mark, or worse, working alone, someone else entirely. I tried to ease back into life. Work was the same. Emails, deadlines, coworkers making bad coffee, but my focus was shattered. Jules, who had been my right hand in catching Mark, was still around for the first week, helping me sort through loose ends with the police. But by week 2, she made her decision. She was moving away. "It's not just about him," she said as we packed up some of her things. "It's everything. I need a fresh start, somewhere far enough that this can't touch me again." I didn't try to talk her out of it. Part of me envied her for having the courage to cut ties so cleanly. Before she left, she hugged me tight and whispered, "Don't stop looking over your shoulder. Just don't let it rule you either." Easier said than done. If there was one silver lining, it was Sophie. We'd started as neighbors who casually hung out. Then she became the person I leaned on most during the stalking. Now, it felt like more. We never had the "what are we" talk, but she'd hold my hand when we walked to the store. She'd fall asleep on my couch during movie nights. She learned how I took my coffee without asking. There was comfort in her presence, like a buffer between me and the world. But there was also guilt, because no matter how close we got, I couldn't completely open up. There was a part of me still trapped in survival mode, scanning for threats while she talked about weekend plans. One night, she caught me glancing out the window for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. "You're doing it again," she said softly. "Doing what?" I asked, playing dumb. "You're here, but not here. You're watching the street like you're waiting for something bad to happen." I didn't answer. She didn't press. It was about 3 months after Mark's arrest when the letter arrived. No return address, just my name, written in blocky letters, and my apartment number. For a second, I thought it was junk mail. Then I noticed the faint red stamp in the corner. Correctional Facility Mail Screening. Mark. My hands actually shook as I tore it open. The paper was creased, the handwriting familiar but jagged. The entire page contained only one line. "I'm not the only one watching you." No signature, no threats, just that. I read it 5 times, trying to decide if it was a mind game or a warning. Was he bluffing, trying to keep a hold date over me even from inside prison walls? Or was there really someone else out there? Someone I hadn't seen yet. The thought chilled me more than anything Mark had done. Because if there was someone else, they'd been quiet this whole time, waiting. And if he was lying, then it meant he still knew exactly what string to pull to make me unravel. I folded the letter back up, slid it into the envelope, and locked it in my desk drawer. Out of sight, but never out of mind.